Hi there, everyone. Welcome to another Conversations with Carla. And this one is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to be in the hot seat, and I'm going to have my daughter Tabitha um, hold the interview. So I'm passing the baton to Tabitha Lewis.
Yes. Coach Carla in the hot seat. Oh my goodness. Wow. So, you know, you've had a wonderful journey that has brought you here. Um, can you just start by, where you were born? Where were you born?
Well, actually, I was born in Chicago, but
Okay.
at the age of 4, my family moved to where my father was from, St. Croix, Virgin Islands. So that's where I grew up.
Wow. So so on that journey, you've been able to live in a couple different places,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Have you always, when you were growing up, did you always feel as though you were a wallflower? Because I know that's the title for today.
Yeah, I know. Well, to all the wallflowers out there. So yes, there were 5 of us, and I was the second oldest, so not technically the middle child, but I grew up in the era where they said children are to be seen and not heard. And because back then they believed in corporal punishment, because I didn't want to get spankings, I just stayed so low key. I just tried to blend into the woodwork so I wouldn't draw any attention to myself, so I wouldn't get any spankings.
Yes. So to that, I know you had siblings. How many siblings did you have?
So there are 5 of us. There are 4 girls and 1 brother.
Okay. I know that Abuelita also had other kids in the house. So how
Yeah.
many, people did your mother have in the house on any given occasion growing up?
Well, my mom was a teacher, and so therefore there were always children around. I remember far back as a child when my mom got her degree. So she got her degree after she got married. So we lived in Puerto Rico for about 3.5 years. So hablo español, sí, muy bien. So I learned Spanish living there. Um, but my mom loved teaching. She was so creative. And one of the things I remember, we would have this Oldsmobile car, and it was like one of those clown cars. I kid you not, we would have at least 12 kids sometimes in the car. My mom would pick up different children for different rehearsals or for different activities, and we'll just pile on in that Oldsmobile. Her 5 and some others, sometimes our cousins, but we had children in our house. And when you ask about other children, my mom was like a second mom to a lot of other children who we considered like our sisters and brothers as well growing up.
Yes, yes, very nice. Can you share a favorite memory in Puerto Rico?
Oh, my favorite memory in Puerto Rico is when I learned how to bake my first pumpkin pie from scratch.
Mm.
And they had those pumpkins, and so it was a youth group, and we were by an adult's house, and we had to cut up our pumpkin, cook it down, and bake pumpkin pie from scratch. And I believe my love for all types of beans and very ethnic food came from the Caribbean and from living in Puerto Rico. Their food just have a freshness and a pop to it that I like.
Yes. Awesome. Yes. So, for anybody that doesn't know, can you define your definition of what you believe to be a wallflower is?
Okay, so my definition of a wallflower is someone who just observes. And for me, growing up, I was an observer. I would observe at church, I would observe at home. I would just literally be in a room, and I really felt that adults forgot I was there because I did hear certain conversations because I just blended in. So my definition of a wallflower is someone who just blends into the background, don't draw attention to yourself, and you can be easily overlooked because
Mhm.
you just fade in with the background.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. Yes, that's a great way to explain that. Um, and I know that, you're saying that, from Wallflower to Coach. So we're going to be talking about that. Everybody who's tuning in, I just want you to drop your comments down or your questions. This is free game. You can ask Carla anything. We're excited to kind of put her in the hot seat, really get a better understanding of what brought her to be able to be here and be the life coach, relationship coach that she is today. So I just want to say that. But yeah, so I love how you said that you kind of fell into the background and, you didn't draw much attention to yourself. What do you think played a role in you being a wallflower? What caused you to kind of be in the
Um,
background?
well, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't like to get
Spanking,
spankings.
right, right.
And so, therefore, when I saw my older sister who had such a personality, and even the sister after me, they were so bold in saying what they want to do. And I was just like, oh my goodness, they're going to get in trouble because in our day and age, when I was growing up, and again with a Caribbean father, um, and that kind of a discipline, it was just like you don't answer back, you don't talk back, you didn't have a say in something, and that was a bit frustrating
Yeah.
as a child when they didn't ask for an explanation about something. And so therefore it was so easy for me to just live on the outskirts because it wasn't a place where my voice would be valued or it would be heard. And so therefore I believe as a safety mechanism, I just didn't say or do anything. I did what was expected of me and therefore stifled so much of my creativity.
Yes, yes. As a child though, even with you being this wallflower, were you ever, still did you ever still get in trouble even though you were in the background,
Well,
What
yeah,
was that?
sometimes he got in trouble because if one got in trouble, everybody else got in trouble. So it was just like if one did it, then everybody did. But the problem with being a wallflower, because I didn't want to get in trouble, and I apologized profusely to my cousin as an adult, I learned to lie. And so therefore, if somebody asked me something, if I did do something, I would say, no, I didn't. So one of the things was my grandmother, my father's mom, she would make these lovely foods that she would sell, but
Mhm.
we weren't allowed to have any. And sometimes when I would go to their house after school, I was hungry. And so I would sneak in and I would take, you could say steal some food from there. And when they asked, who did it, I would lie. But my older cousin, she got in trouble for so many things because they put her in charge of us and she was the oldest. And I felt horrible for that. And when we talk now as adults, I was just like, I am so sorry. But that's what I did. So I learned to just kind of lie, which is not a good thing, but it's what I did to avoid being spanked.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, I'm glad you apologized to your cousin. And yes, everybody listening, do not lie and at the expense. First of all, don't lie, but lying leads to different consequences. And in this case, a cousin was middle of my mother's lie. Yeah.
But when you talk about lying, because this is a different thing too that I realized early on in growing up for me, I learned to lie in an honest way because you know how sometimes you tell kids to say you're sorry. And many times when you were told, I was told to say I'm sorry when I wasn't sorry. But I learned early to placate and just say, oh, I'm sorry when I wasn't sorry. So you learn to lie. I learned to lie. And that's one of the things I didn't want to do with my girls. I I I learned to lie. You learned easy. I learned early on, it's easy to placate someone and pass lie to
Mhm.
just make things easier. And it was one of those traits I did when I grew into a young woman and adult, which was harmful in relationships because you
Mhm.
start lying and not being honest to avoid confrontation, to avoid being in trouble, so you avoid not being liked. And so that was one of my transformations when I start telling the truth and
Yes,
teaching
yes.
others to tell the truth.
So, Coach Carla, are you saying that when parents tell their kids to say sorry, they might be encouraging their kids to lie early on in life?
Yep. What they're doing is encouraging and teaching them that you don't have to really mean anything. Just say the words to get people off your back. That's what they're doing. Inadvertently, that's exactly what they're teaching their children to do.
Mhm. So,
Yeah.
what advice or what recommendations would you have for parents to not do that? What's something they should be doing instead of telling their kids to say sorry? Let's say their kid did something, to another child. What are some things that they should be saying or instilling instead of to
Because
say
one
sorry?
of the things that I did with my girls growing up, I would ask my girls, are you sorry for doing this? So, say for instance, they hit someone, or say for instance, they threw a tantrum or threw something, I would say, are you sorry? And if they said no, I would apologize to the other child and say, you know what, I'm sorry that my child did this to you. And when she's truly sorry, she will reach out to you if she is. And so that's what I would do, because then I would talk with my child, continue to give them life lessons to see how this is applied, see if someone did this to you, find out what the crux of the matter is that's happening and deal with that. Because many times when they're doing something, uh, it really is the response of something else that they're dealing with. So getting to the root problem instead of just dealing with the surface. So
Yeah.
that's what I would encourage parents to do. Get to the root of the problem and just don't pacify, because that's what kids will learn to do. And they do it in relationships, and that's what comes so many relationships fail.
Hmm. Okay. So to that, you know, as you are going through, your journey, and you're noticing your siblings, some of them being bold and not wallflowers, and you continue to embrace or be that wallflower that you feel is what you're supposed to be. When you left St. Croix and you came to Alabama for school, what what was that transition like? What was that kind of going from being monitored and somebody knowing everything that you're doing to going off to college, and being this wallflower? What was that like?
Well, again, going off to college I was excited about going off to college, but again, my parents told me where I had to go. I wanted to go somewhere else, and it was like, nope, if we're paying for it, you have to go here. And so again, I didn't have any money, didn't know what other options I could do. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to this particular school. So even there, and my older sister was already at that school. And because one of the reasons why I wanted to go somewhere else is, as a wallflower, my sister and I were not even a year apart. So I really was like in the shadow. And
Okay.
I really wanted to go somewhere where I could possibly have an identity of my own and not be known as my sister's younger sister.
Right, right.
But that wasn't an option. So even when I went away to college, I was trying a little bit. But again, because I'd learned how to just conform to what was expected of me and not necessarily what I wanted to do, I just continued to just surf along and just, not rock the status quo.
Oh my goodness. So what state was it? In Alabama? What state was the school that you wanted to go into? What state was it in?
It was actually in Texas.
Oh
I
wow.
I wanted to go to a college in Texas.
Y'all, this lady love her some cowboy boots. So that love would have been nourished a little bit earlier on had you gone to.
I would have been riding horses, who knows what, if I'd gone my path. Yes.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, so that transition, what was the transition like? You said why you wanted to go, but what was the transition like going from St. Croix to Alabama?
Well, St. Croix to Alabama was a little bit different because now I was in the South. And because I was a wallflower, they had a lot of students there who came from different boarding academies. So they already had their friends, they already had cliques. And I was never a cliquish person. And so therefore, it was easy for me to fade into the background as well, too, because I am not I'm not a cliquish person. I don't like when people say you can't talk to someone else because they're not in your group. So
Mhm.
therefore, there was a bit of that there
Right.
at this particular institution. And then you had people who sang. And so if you sang well, then you were accepted in certain groups. And even though in my little church, they let me sing and made me think I could sing, once I got to that college, it's like, you can't sing. And I'm like, I still have a problem with that because even
See?
now, I'm gonna still sing my way. I don't care if it's off tune. I'm gonna sing.
You're gonna sing. You're gonna sing. So when you got to Alabama, how the system was kind of set up. You kind of remained in the wallflower situation because
Uh,
it
I
wasn't really
did.
a way for you to kind of
I did get involved in certain activities in college, but it really was what people expected you to do. So you did what was expected. I did, and so it was all right. If you hear my husband tell it differently, because I did meet my husband when I was at this particular college. But when you hear him tell the story, he just swears I was Miss Popular, and that was not the case whatsoever. But if you hear his recounting of events, which are drastically different from mine, but I let him tell his stories because it makes him feel good.
yeah. So yeah, you met your husband there. Um, and once you finished with school in Alabama, where did you move to?
After that, I got a job. Well, initially, I went to Chicago where my maternal grandparents were because I was trying to find a job. Couldn't find a job there and ended up going to DC, Maryland,
Okay.
and got my first job out of college there as a preschool Head Start teacher, then got
Okay.
as a Head Start supervisor. And that was exciting for me to just be able to impact
Young
young
mind. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So just backing up a little bit, when you were in college, what was your major?
So my major in college was psychology and child development. So when I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a guidance counselor. But again, I think
And
that
what
was
else? What else did you want to be? There was something else you wanted to be other than that.
wait, a wrestler? You mean that?
Yes, I want to wrestler.
Oh, yes. So again, if I were able to do my thing, I grew up watching Andre the Giant, Dusty Rhodes, and I wanted to be a wrestler. I used to hang out with the fellas in high school and look at the magazines, Ric Flair, all of those. And I remember, practicing the figure four because I wanted to be a wrestler. But again, that was not something that you were supposed to do. It was
Yeah,
not, I grew up in a conservative Christian environment. So that was just not something you
an
do.
option. Right. It was an option. But it's so interesting that, being a wallflower, you still desire to just do something so out there like wrestling, like there was something brewing in there.
Because internally, I knew I wanted to just get out and just kind of, you know, knock
Let
some
out that
people out.
you knew you wanted to be able to freely knock people out. Yeah. That's definitely a career.
Pent up frustration and because of not being able to just live my life
Yeah. Yeah.
without so many restrictions.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. Some pent up frustrations. What have been some pent up frustrations that you maybe experienced during college or when you moved to DC or even when you first got married? What were some pent up emotions that you had?
Well, when I say pent up frustrations, one of the things when you don't allow a child to explore and develop naturally, so that they can find their purpose early on in life,
Mhm.
you delay them, and so
Yeah.
I think that pent up frustration is just that delay of finding my gifting, finding what it is I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, because if you're so busy controlling a child's life that they don't even know how to think independently of you or know what it is that
Right.
they're good at, there's frustration. There's frustration because you wonder, who am I? Who
Right.
am I outside of what my parents say I'm supposed to do or where I'm supposed to go? We teased a lot because again, it was just home, church, and school, home, church, and school, and my grandparents' house. But so yeah, so that pent up frustration was just dormant for many years because I still didn't know what I wanted. I knew that there was something there that wasn't I wasn't happy or fulfilled, but I still didn't know what it was that I wanted.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Wow. So when you after you were the preschool teacher, you got your degree in psychology and all of that. When you were the preschool teacher, or Head Start teacher, did you want to do something else? Were you constantly like kind of looking for something else, or were you just like, I'm okay?
No, at that point in time, I wasn't because I thought I was just okay because I was dating your dad. And so then we were thinking about getting married. So I was like, well, okay, again, back in the day, that's what you did.
Right.
You got married, you had a family, and that was supposedly your life.
Right.
Not understanding what other giftings that you could have that you could do. So nope, I was dating him, and we were thinking about getting married. So no, didn't think of anything else that I could be doing with my life.
Yes. Yes. So was Poppy your first boyfriend?
Yeah, he was, and because again, growing up, we really didn't were allowed to date, and as a wallflower, right, I didn't have any boyfriends in high school or anything. So when I met Zachary at college, yes, he was the guy I dated, and even though we broke up and went our separate ways for a while, we did reconnect again, and then ended up, yeah.
Reconnect. Is that the word we want to use with Tabitha as the host? We want to use. What do you read? Okay, reconnect. Okay, let Rebecca or Hannah or me tell it or Zachary tell it. Reconnect is that's the that's the best way to for you. That's the best phrase. So for you guys, for some of you all tuning in, you know, my mom and Carla here, my mom and dad, they had an interesting, you know, journey with a relationship. And my mom was set on Zach. She was zoomed in. She, for whatever reason, there was something she saw in my dad, or maybe it was just her desire to, or maybe, Carla to be able to help us understand, that because when she said she went up to DC, my dad didn't finish at the school in Alabama. He left a little bit early and transferred to a different school. So my mom was left in Alabama. Not very sure about the exact times of the breakup. But any ladies listening out there, if there's some people that when they find out their ex is in another state, they don't want to be in that state. And there's others that believe in positioning like Ruth.
No, I was a challenger. I did not go in that state for positioning. I know if you listen to Zachary or whatever tell the story, it wasn't because I went to Chicago initially, Maywood, trying to find a job and just couldn't find a job. But I had a wonderful cousin, love her to death. Anna, who was living in the Maryland, DC area.
Area. Okay, okay,
And
cousin Anna.
so
Okay.
it was DC. Now I knew had jobs. I didn't have a car, so it'd be easier to get around with to do. So when I was thinking about positioning myself, it wasn't with the fact of positioning because he was there. It just
Okay.
happened that he was there.
Okay.
And but I really wanted to be in a place where there were other young adults, where there were things happening,
Yeah.
because I really wanted to get out of my wallflower
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
Being in Maywood, Illinois, it wasn't happening that way. And that's like I always encourage my girls, find a city where you can have a life as a young adult. And in Illinois, Maywood, where I was, I couldn't find a job. And I chose DC, Maryland. So it wasn't because he was there, but people will
Thanks for
think that they did.
setting the record straight.
You're welcome.
So yes, you came there and you were okay with being the teacher.
Hmm.
It was fine. And then how much later after that did you get married? After
I
you
got
were married that year.
married 2 years after college. So I got married 2 years after college. Hmm.
Okay. 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 And why did you want to get married?
Well, again, because it was something that was expected,
Right.
and back in the day, for the young ladies, I'll be honest, they would say better to marry than to burn. So again, you were like,
Wow.
let's marry, and so I got married.
Wow. Okay. Yes, you got married, and so you're still this wallflower. While you're dating Zachary, you're a wallflower. You have kids. Are you still a wallflower? And that you're having the kids? When
Yeah, I'm still sort
you
of in
start
the
doing
back.
that show coming out?
Yeah,
When you
I'm
start?
still in the background because one of the things too, when I was at my college, there were a lot of people there who some were becoming ministers. And so one of the things people would say, well, oh, you would make a great minister's wife. And I was like, no, I know, because I know what's hidden inside my heart. And I know that's not going to happen. That's not where I want to be. I don't want that responsibility. And I don't want to lead anybody astray. And so there were guys who wanted to date me, but they were studying to be pastors, and I wanted to have nothing to do with that. So now with Zachary there, so keep in mind, I'm still doing what is expected of me because it's hard when you've been taught a certain way to do and expect
Mhm.
to break out. So no, we had children, and so yes, I'm still doing the status quo, what is
Yes,
expected of me.
yes, yes. Would you consider your husband when you guys were dating, was he a wallflower as well, or would you say that he was a little bit more bold, or was he kind of like, what would you characterize?
Well, he was a pastor's kid, so he knew lots of people knew him. If you hear him tell it, he's like, no, he didn't know that many people, but people knew him.
Okay.
So you'd have to ask him his story.
Okay, yeah. So I do have some more questions. You're doing so great with your answers. Um, I know that's something, that, I'm trying to get you to kind of get to the point where you were like, I need to be a coach. When
Okay. Okay, so I'll do that because in this interim during this wallflower stage
right.
is that when I got married, my husband, and he's saying not, my husband, we found out had a chronic illness. So
Okay.
as soon as we got married, it wasn't diagnosed or discovered, but that took us on a journey where, oh my goodness, I feel I can. One of the things that I do as a stress management coach help those women who are caregivers because having to be responsible or dealing with that illness with my husband for the first 2 years of our marriage and then having children right away was overwhelming. It was so stressful. And I still remember when we were at one of the many times when he was in the hospital, how the nurse came in and asked him, oh, is this your mom? And my husband had a good laugh about that because everybody always told him he looked so young. And so there they are thinking I'm his mother. But I realized I was allowing the stress and all of that responsibility
Right.
to just
Right.
slowly zap me that it was killing me. And I remember saying to myself, you know what? Something's gonna have to change because there's no way that I'm gonna go first and he gonna marry somebody else with this life insurance money.
Wow. That's growth from where you are today, from that in your mind. Growth, Coach Carla. Thankful for growth in that way. So, you had to deal with being a caregiver and everything like that. So that kind of pushed you into not being on the background. Is that what you were trying to say?
No, it still pushed me on the background because I wasn't taking care of myself. My focus was still my children. My focus was for him. So still staying in the background, still not rocking the boat.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. And
So do you want me to jump to when I stopped being a wallflower?
I want you. I want to know. I don't want you to jump to when you stop being a rock flower. I want you. My question is, when in your mind was your first coaching experience before you were a coach?
Oh, well, you know, it's so interesting because when I was in college, I wrote for our college newspaper and I did
Mhm.
a Dear Carla column, sort of like your
Mm,
Dear Abby. So when I look back and think about it, it's like, wow, God, you had that in my spirit even then. So my first coaching thing before I became a coach, was that I was the go-to person in my family when my siblings or other people had some issue. I realized they would come and bounce things off of me, and I was able to give them a unbiased opinion about something and get them to think through something. So that started happening in college. People would write, and I would write my Dear Carla column. And
okay.
then as an adult, I couldn't say exactly when, but I was someone who people would come to for some advice.
Some advice. Got you. So you're saying, initially it was like your family, but you did have that experience in college where you were able to people to write stuff in anonymously, and you provide some, advice, and you know, here we are. We are with Coach Carla today. Um, is there something that you would say to people who are battling with coming out? Um, of their wallflower stage, if that's something they want to do? Is there something that you would tell those people?
I would, and I say do the inner work. And so for me, what was transformative in coming out of my wallflower stage is when I was actually going through a rough time in my marriage, when I was really thinking of staying or leaving, and having to work through those things. And I end up having some great female accountability people. My one friend, Francine, my friend, Wanda, these were two women who I was able to just talk and share. And during that journey, it helped me to grow and find a voice with it. And so, what I would tell women, especially if you haven't found your voice early on, I'm here to help you find your voice, but really it's a matter of knowing it's never too late to find your voice and to find what it is that makes you smile and want to get up in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it kind of segues into my next question. You kind of answered it a little bit, but was what or who helped you bravely birth peace in the pieces of your life? I know you said Francine and Wanda. I love those ladies. Awesome, awesome women. As a child, I don't see them as, many little coaches or people that are helping you on your journey towards, being Coach Carla. But yeah, you saying their names definitely. But is there anybody else, or when I say what or who helped?
Yeah. So what also happened was I was living in St. Croix during this journey. And I remember it's not funny, but because I was in a stage of searching, I wasn't offended. When you're searching and wounded, sometimes it's like you're so past the state of being offended. Because I remember at the church that I was attending, they told me I couldn't work with the young people anymore. I was helping out with the young people, and so they told me because I wore pants to some functions. At this particular church, you weren't supposed to wear pants, and I was like, okay, fine. I won't work with the young people anymore. And lo and behold, they didn't realize that I'm going through a personal struggle, but that was their focus. But during that time for me, my I found out about this women's group called Sisters, and they would meet once a month. And Diane Canigator was one of the leaders for this group, and that was such a soul refreshing for me during that time.
Yeah.
Also, my older sister, Laverne, I remember her telling me, Carla, you need to pray and fast. I'm like, I don't want to pray and fast because I know what God's going to tell me to do. I don't want to do it. But it was really through Sisters with Diane. And I was able to tell her a few years ago just how impactful her ministry was for me during that time. To just have a place to be seen, to be heard, to cry, and that 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 was the birthing cocoon for when I started transitioning from wallflower to that late bloomer.
Yeah, and I love that story because of course I do know about Sisters. When we were on St. Croix, you would go there on the weekends when they would have their meetings. Um, and I think it's just awesome that that coaching kind of setting, that sister setting that you had, you're doing that now with all of the different accountability groups you're doing now. So it's kind of come full circle in the sense of having pieces of your life and not knowing what to do with it to now, helping others bravely birth peace in that. So I just, loved kind of hearing the different people that were so instrumental in that for you. So yeah, that is so important. Let me get my other question. So I know that, you talked about, your sister, kind of the shadow that you were in, your older sister. Is there's something, I know a little bit about the jealousy that was kind of, something that you struggled with. But what are 3 things you feel like you struggled most with as earlier, Carla? What are 3 things you really, really struggled with?
Well, definitely one of the things I struggled with was comparison because I would compare myself to my siblings and I would see myself as less than. So I would say comparison, which led to jealousy. And the other thing that I would say for that, and it all ties in, but low self-esteem. So it was just all the same package of feeling low self-esteem. Because I still remember as a child, as a wallflower, I thought about committing suicide. And I just felt so isolated and not seen and not heard there. But I still remember, and this young man, he was a couple grades ahead of me, Vaughn Brown. He never realized just how much he saved me that day because my dad was having choir rehearsal. We would have to be at church, and I'm writing in my book because I was a reader and I would write certain things, and I had such dark thoughts and I remember thinking, oh, I just wanted to end it. And he came after choir practice there and he just started talking to me. And I realized that that was a moment that took me off the ledge. For that moment, I felt seen, I felt heard. And that's become, it's so important. You never know what words you're saying to someone that could keep them from doing something they would regret later on. But that's one of those memories I have from a childhood because of that comparison that I did and thought I wasn't good enough or people were better than me, that jealousy factor.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. So I'm gonna share a photo with the viewers, and I just want Coach Carla to kind of just say what she would have told this person. Okay, so we'll share the picture. I hope you guys can see it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, it's faded out a little bit. So tap on the screen so they can see it. Okay. Okay, yes, that is a picture of me, and that was my driver's license picture on in 2003. So that is when I moved to St. Croix. I moved back to St. Croix in 2001, and that was taken in 2003, and that was at a very low point for me. So you could tell by my facial expression the hopelessness that I just felt there. Yep, as though life is not worth living. Um, why am I here? Let's get it over with. When am I going to die? I'm just miserable. And so, what was the question you asked me to say?
If you could go back in time, what would you tell? What
Oh,
would Coach Carla tell Carla?
I would tell her, baby, 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 baby.
Because you
Let's
know what was going on. I mean,
right.
you're at the license place, so it's like,
Right. I would tell her, let's find you. Let's find you. So often, and that's what I enjoy working with my clients because it's finding them. It's like being buried under so many layers and you can't even find you anymore because you're so lost. But it's just like, let me find you. Let me help
yeah,
you find you and peel back those layers. So what I would tell that person is, let's sit down. Let me hear your story. Let me hear what's happening. Let me hear why you feel so despondent, why you don't feel you have any value. Let me hear you. So now we can put on some corrective lenses. Like, again, put some corrective lenses on so that you now see the world through clean glasses, through a different lens. That's what I
yeah,
would tell
yeah.
myself.
Thank you. So, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a sister, you know, but, with all of that, you have your coaching clients. Who do you believe is the harder people for you to actually be able to use your gifting with?
Oh, because the hardest ones are people who, like me, who felt nothing's going to change. It's like, well, nothing's going to change. And I understand what they say because many times, because I was unhappy in my marriage, I thought things can't change because he's not going to change. And so, one of the hardest things for me to tell people is that you can change because if you change and change your mindset, you no longer have given anyone else that control. For so many years, I thought it was my husband's responsibility for me to be happy or to improve my self esteem or to do this and that. But finally, when I tell people, even if the other person doesn't change, if you change, you can have an awesome life. And that's what they don't believe. They think that the other person has to change their husband, their wife, their child, their daughter, and if they don't change, then nothing's going to happen. But I'm living an example that the other person doesn't have to change a bit.
Yeah,
You're the one who can change.
yeah. So I love how you kind of spoke on that. And because you're a coach, I kind of think about, coaches on the field and everything like that. You can see something happening to a player before it happens and the players in the game. And so with your clients, I know it's hard to be able to say, hey, do X, Y, and Z, um, trust that this is gonna work out. Like I know what you're feeling, or I feel your pain or your frustrations. So with that, when you're talking to your clients, what's something you have to remind yourself as a coach to kind of keep yourself, in the game and not allow yourself to get discouraged?
Well, one of the things that I remember, because again, from my child development training in college, there's a thing that's called a point of readiness. So imagine a child who's learning to crawl. Many people try to make them walk before they know how to crawl or hold up their head. There's a process. And as a coach, I remember that I have to be patient with them in their process and wait till they're at a point of readiness. So if somebody had told me something like this 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I wasn't at a point of readiness. You have
Mhm.
to wait till that person's at a point of readiness. And that goes for everything. And when you get to that point of readiness, you have to remind yourself and my client that this is a journey. All of
Mhm.
your answers aren't going to happen overnight. You're not going to feel this way overnight. Because
Mhm.
I talk about my transformation from wallflower to late bloomer, it was when you guys were having a vacation Bible school, and the memory verse that you guys had to remember that summer was from Psalms that says, I am wonderfully and beautifully made. And I remember I was at a point of readiness to start believing that. So it
Mhm.
didn't matter if others may have told me, oh, you're beautiful or that you're special. It wasn't until that moment that I was just like, wait a minute, I am wonderfully made, and I don't have to compare myself with anyone else. And it's okay if somebody thinks that I'm not attractive or tells me that, because people can be so cruel. But I'm like, no, I am. And
Mhm.
I remember repeating that memory verse and saying, I don't believe it yet, God, but I'm going to keep repeating this. And so now you can't tell me nothing.
We know. We know. I second that. We can't tell like nothing. So yeah, you just kind of are aware of that point of readiness because you had to get to that point of readiness.
Hmm.
So you're relatable in that sense of, hey, I've been there,
Hmm.
happened for me overnight, and you don't expect that for your clients at all. You're there for
Right.
the journey. You're there for the journey.
Hmm.
Personalized, care, personalized, guidance for them on the journey. So I'm just so happy you've just been able to share so much. I'm just like, oh, I kind of like, I have some more questions. One that's kind of coming to mind is, with your, I remember when you told me you didn't want to be a social worker and your reasoning for that. So I would just want everybody to, do you remember why you studied social work or something and you said, or you realized you couldn't study social work and your reasoning for that was,
I
I can
can't.
remind you. I can remind you. So what's funny is what my mom does is listen to people's problems all the time. When she was figuring out what she wanted to study in college, she didn't want to do social work because she's like, I can't listen to people's problems all day. Here she is, full like she love. I am here to attest to the fact that she loves what she does. Like she's so giddy when she has a call, when she's about to meet with a client. She has that phone on do not disturb. She's excited. So you don't remember, but I remember you saying, I don't want to listen to people's problems all day. I couldn't do it. And here you are coaching people through stress management and relationships, and all that sounds like is a whole bunch of problems to me.
Again, when you say things when you try to run from your calling, I guess that
Yeah.
I was running from my calling even back then, because I realized once I allowed myself to find my purpose. And I want to give a shout out to my coach. So I ended up getting a coach, Coach
Right.
Tasha Scott.
Mhm.
And it was through her that I really realized, hey, I want to be a coach. And I've been with her ever since. It's been about 6 years, just her mentoring and coaching. I love her to death. But because one of the books she had me read was from Miles Monroe, talking about your purpose. And I remember telling her that I felt like Rip Van Winkle once my children were adult grown and kind of starting to go away to college. I'm like, well, what am I going to do now with my life? I was a stay-at-home mom for 12 years,
Yeah.
got back in the workforce, but it's just like, who am I? And as I told you, because I didn't know what my purpose was, I was still kind of shy and thinking that that really wasn't my purpose, but it was something that my parents told me to do. So, or I felt that I had to do. So now realizing that no, this is something that I enjoy doing, and that as a late bloomer, I found out that I do have a unique sense of humor that not everybody gets, but I can use it very well in interacting with my clients and when I have speaking engagements. I believe I have a way of breaking things down that could be offensive, but in a humorous way,
Yes.
so that
Yes.
people still get the point. So, yeah.
Wow. So here you are in Alabama, a state you would have never really seen yourself in after you graduated from college. And this is where the that last push, the baby push of I'm going to be a coach, happen. I can't say that would have happened if you stayed in St. Croix or if you
Right.
in DC. It was all of the different pieces coming together at that moment, and you being in that state of readiness to say what you kind of recommend to people listening now. Get that coach. Get Carla. Get those sisters. Like, she had that sister group that was part of the process before she said, "Hey, I want to be a coach," just for birthing peace in the pieces of her life. But tap in. You're not supposed to do this alone, and that's why you've created this space. I know you're right now in a series with some awesome people doing the forgiveness challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
am. And so because I ended up doing a forgiveness challenge because I realized in my own life that forgiveness was an issue. I had to learn to forgive my father. I had to learn to forgive my grandmother. I had to learn to forgive myself, learn to forgive my sisters. So it was a journey, and I realized that for many people, forgiveness is an issue. And one of the things too is I created this acronym called ARC for conflict resolution. So I'm excited. I'm getting ready to get my ebook ready on that. But it was one of those things where I know this is the source for many problems, um, conflict. And so these are different things that now in my mature state that I am excited about creating and doing and helping people improve on their relationships because uh, if you were like me, sometimes you say, forget it, I don't need anyone. But that's not true. We are really meant to be connecting with others.
right,
If we're honest, we're just hurt by certain things. So, how can I fix that, resolve that, learn to set boundaries, learn to be honest in my relationships with people? It's something that you need to learn. We didn't learn it like we learned the one, two, threes or the ABCs, but we can learn how to have healthy relationships.
yes, and that's what you're here to do. What you're here to provide to your clients is to provide
Mhm.
those healthy relationships. And you know, while you were talking, I was just kind of thinking about, wow, is there such thing really as a late bloomer? Is that the right term for you? Because you've been through so much, so many of these different, your journey that has brought you to where you are is why you're able to be such an impactful, influential coach. If it was any earlier, would you have been able to really be able to pull from everything that you're pulling from now when you're having those moments? So is late bloomer, you
Well,
know,
I think late bloomer is a good word, but I see where you're coming from because um, sometimes, just like when I see you and my girls and others being influencers in their 20s and their 30s, I think that is so good. And it could be that I just didn't see myself that way because of my insecurities. Because one of the things that I do now, when I was growing up, I didn't wear makeup, I didn't wear jewelry. So you guys didn't see that side of your mom. But now in this phase of my life, I'm like, yes, I'm even going to model. I do a little modeling for my community. And that person who was insecure and had self esteem issues would have never done something like that.
right?
But yes, so when I say late bloomers, certain people were doing all those things in their earlier years and now they're coasting because they've lived life. Whereas for me now, it's like, no, I'm enjoying life, traveling, meeting people. Where I used to be an introvert, I still am, but I am a little bit more outgoing.
Yeah.
And just being able to discover new giftings and talents. So that's what I think I'm a bloomer.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, how can people get plugged in to you? Are there any events or sessions coming up, or what would you?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that because for those of you who are in Clubhouse, my husband has been talking about for Clubhouse forever. So just yesterday, I actually created my first club in Clubhouse. It's the Maxwell Disc Method. And I'm a John Maxwell certified speaker coach. And I'm also a disc trainer and consultant. And the tool I use for my coaching is teaching people how to communicate better. And that particular assessment is just awesome for us to identify how you communicate. So many times for conflict or misunderstanding in business, in personal life, is because there's been a misunderstanding.
Right.
When my sisters and I were together just a few weeks ago, we kept saying, we're not sure if we're communicating okay. What point of the conversation are you starting from? And where am I? Because so many things can happen. But we
Right.
knew we were working on that, being intentional. So I'm excited about giving value on that particular platform for those of you who may be interested in, if you're on Clubhouse, feel free to join the club. I plan to add value there. I am currently doing my forgiveness challenge. That's being wonderful, and we're having some aha moments and breakthroughs that are
It's free for you guys, and it's free. It is free. This
it's
is
free.
it's
If you're interested, we're like in week 8 now, and it's like 13 or 14 weeks. So if you are, just send me a message and I can send you the link. It is a free one where we are looking at the Forgiveness University from Mike Todd's Transformation Church. And as I call it, is like the tutoring sessions for those of us who didn't get it the first time, but you need some one-on-one to just break through some of those barriers. That's what we're doing in that community. And also, right, I do have the one-on-one coaching that I offer as well to help people just find their voice and decide what they want to do and what it's going to look like.
awesome. Awesome. Well, Coach Carla, you clearly made your way to your runway in more ways than one. You've made your way from Wallflower to one runway. And so I know that there's so many people that will benefit from tapping in and getting connected with you and learning from you. And so anybody who's listening out there, take that leap, you know, get a consultation, you know, or even if you know somebody who might need what Coach Carla is offering, you know, set them up. Say, hey, I've got you this, you know, I've signed you up. Just go on the console and meet Coach Carla. I think this will be good for you, because it's things like that that can turn into years later somebody looking back and saying, wow, like that person didn't make that connection. I can't say I would be here today. So, you know, take that leap of faith for your friends, for your family, for anybody that you believe, or yourself, you know, and get to a place where you can definitely start, you know, birthing peace in the pieces of your life. So yeah, anything you want to say, Coach Carla, before
Yeah,
we?
I like when you said that because I still remember when a young woman called me. She did if you go on my Facebook page, you can do a 15-minute complimentary session and we can just see if we can work together. And when she called me, I said, well, how did you hear about me? And she says, my mom. I'm like, your mom? And she mentioned who her mom was. She said, yeah, I saw that she made some changes. And I asked her, what's going on? You're different. And her mom told her that she had a coach and it was me. And she said, if you could work those miracles with my mom, I wanted to work with you. And so I just want to say for moms out there, because many times you may have adult children now and there's point of conflict. And my role with my children hasn't always been easy. My child and I, another daughter and I, we had to have some counseling sessions and other things. So it's okay to reach out. You don't Relationships can change. They can be improved. So if you're not speaking with a family member, reach out. Let's see if we can create a plan, an action plan to start that relationship over again because I do believe that we need each other. And as Tabitha said to me one time with one thing her friend said, and I adopted it, people just want to be seen, be heard, and be loved. And I now know that there's so much healing that can be done if somebody else can hear your pain
Yeah.
and now push it through. Because I call myself a relationship doula. And so giving birth is not a pretty thing. It's messy, it's painful. But if you have someone there to push it through, and shout out to my daughter Rebecca, who's a lactation consultant who works with mommy and babies, um, it's painful. But if you have someone there who is knowledgeable to kind of hold your hand, keep you focused through it, because no one can do the journey but you. But
Right.
if you have someone there who's going to tell you, breathe, push, back away a bit, let's do this differently. Let's change positions in relationships and different things. Let me cut this umbilical cord. I may have to cut some relationships.
Right.
Um, that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. So I'm excited. And thank you, Tabitha, for putting me on the hot seat.
Yes, thank you everybody for tuning in.
Yes, guys. Have a good evening.
Yes, bye.
Bye bye.